Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. I'll start with our sponsors, and by then, hopefully, more of the group will gather. Okay, and then we'll get right underway. Speaking of dates and times, if you haven't made arrangements for the dinner, the shul dinner, and you want to go, that's February 27th. Okay.
5 p.m.
Hopefully we'll be in, yeah. Okay. Learning sponsors, A Year of Learning by Sue and Arnie Gerlich in memory of Malka Proman and Philip Mann, and Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, and Yerivka Pro Rosner bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch. In memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edel Bas Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan, friends of Avi Gidler, Avramea ben Shimon, and Martha Gidler, Charna bat Yeshaya, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Saratova bat Yisrael Dov in her memory. Friends, I don't think Sid was here this morning, was he? I didn't see him. Okay. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef Ben Chaim, Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata bat Asher. Friends of Nina Monester, Nechama Azna bat Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of Stephen Vigdor, Lazecha Nishmat Simcha Melech ben Meir Leib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha. A Month of Learning by Haran and Mel Haller in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel Bas Yehuda Leib. B. Pizer in memory of her husband, Rav Yisrael Chaim ben David. Tova and Leo Zimmer in memory of her mother, Henya Bad Rav Beryl, and her father, Aaron ben Yosef Mordechai. Perry and Jill Meltzer in memory of his mother, Malka Bas Baruch, and his sister, Golda Leah Bas David Halevi. Stanley Presser in memory of his mother-in-law, Golda Bas Leber, his mother, Leah Bas Yehuda, and his wife, Ruchel Mincha Bas Moshe. Carol and Josh Sanborn in memory of her father, Yeshua Shia ben Moshe Yehuda HaKohen. David and Sharon Carpel in memory of his father, Zeb Moshe ben Shlomo Yaakov. Have a Week of Learning by Sylvia Gutus in memory of her mother, Devorah Bas Ruvain Chaim. And Sam Levine and Charlie Gelfenstein in memory of Sam's parents and Charlie's in-laws, Livsha Bas Avram Shammai and Yechiel Michal ben Arav Alexander Ziskin. Today is the 25th, and we have a Day of Learning by Henry and Bonnie Stamen in memory of his mother, Edel Bas Yechezkel. May Neshamas have an Aliyah, Kranker Rafia Velt Yeshua Shema Tzaliyah, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good Kaben Shiyar. Okay. All right, Harvey, I see you're on. Ruvain, you on?
Yeah, I'm on.
Right. Ted, welcome back. Okay, what are we on? How about Yud Bet Amud Aleph? The very bottom, right? So we still have a lot of Gemara for today. Yud Bet Amud Beis, right? The very bottom of the Amud, next to the last line, is where we're going to be starting. Okay. V'shole peshtano min hamisra. Okay, that one can remove the flax from the
Dressing trough.
okay, watering pool. Okay. All right, Yud Beis, Amud Beis, next to the last line, probably something like 12b4. All right, I'm guessing.
No, 12b6.
12b6, all right.
It's a lot of Gemara.
I know. I can tell by the amount of time it takes me to prepare. Okay. Right. So let's just put it in a context as we go back into the Gemara. Okay. We said we're dealing with various examples of when workers are in a situation, okay, on Chol HaMoed. Okay. May they work, may they not work? What kind of work can be done? We were balancing the whole question again of tircha versus the issue of hefsei. Okay, we've added now another layer to that, and if I can remember correctly, if you look at the introduction to Moed Katan in Art Scroll, some of these concepts are referred to. All right, but okay, they include factors that prohibit work, derech schirut, working for hire. So we saw already that issue of whether somebody is a day worker versus a contracted worker. Okay, and remember we had the statement that it said whether it was for a week or a month or a year or 7 years, things like that. Okay, we threw in the question of whether somebody could do certain work, but sinah in private as opposed to farhesia in public. Okay, Art Scroll refers to that. Okay, Sorchei Rabim. So again, it doesn't hurt to review the introduction that if you're using Art Scroll, that they have there in their, okay, the need for Ochel Nefesh, okay, things like that. So Art Scroll tries to sensitize us in that introduction to a number of these concepts. Okay, now we come back to this idea of if you're hiring again, a worker, and what are you asking him to do? Okay, can it be the work done we saw by a Jew could do? Then you can hire somebody to do it. Otherwise, it's a problem. So v'shole pishtano min hamisrad. Yud bet, all right, Amud Beis, next to the last line. Ba'imine Rabbi Yirmiyah mi Rabbi Zera. And so Rabbi Yirmiyah is asking Rabbi Zera, right? Kivein melachto b'moed umet. He intended his work to be carried out on Chol HaMoed. Oh, I've got some time on my hands. I'm not going into my regular office, or I'm not going into my regular field, whatever. I'll paint my garage. I'll do whatever I have to do, right? On Chol HaMoed, but what happens? The Ribono Shel Olam intervenes.
Well, no, he did the work.
Oh. Mahush, right. So what happened? So he did the work, or he Mahushi Kansu Banav Acharav. What is the status then of his heirs in terms of do they suffer in some way, some sort of
do they get the benefit of that effort? Okay,
or are they punished in some way? Okay, so that's the question. All right, Im Timtse Lomar. Okay, if you're going to say, as we now go over to Yud Gimel, today's stuff. All right, Saram Ozen Babachor. Okay, if you're going to say, let's take in a different example. if you have a firstborn animal and you have twitched, done something to its ear, cut its ear, flicked its ear, pushed it through a fence, whatever you're going to do, so that there is now melamum on this animal, and therefore the Bechor is no longer viable in its status as a Bechor, okay, as a Korban, correct? And therefore you're going to have a nice lunch from that animal, okay? What happens? All right, in that case, Kanso bano acharav, says the text, right? We do put some sort of a
animal is asur b'hanot.
Right. So what happens is there is no use of that animal, okay, and therefore there is a knas, okay, a put on the son of that individual. Mishum de isur de oraita, because it is a forbidden to Torah mandated. Ve'im timtze lomar, and if you're going to say another example, machar avdo le'oved kochavim umeit, okay, that someone sold his servant, okay, to a Gentile, right? And what happens? And then the seller dies, okay? And remember, we've had a Mishnah, a text that told us, no, you go ahead and you buy them, so that it basically removes the servant from being under the control of a Gentile, because in that way, its person is freed, okay, in a sense, and partly becomes a Jew, and ultimately, when totally freed, becomes a Jew, right? What happens? Umeit, the seller dies. Kansoba navacharav. Here too, we see that there is a knas. There can be no benefit.
The son is forced to buy the slave back.
And then buys the slave back, and then to free them. Right. Okay, in that case. Mishum dekol yoma mafkele mi mitzvot. Why? Because every day that he's under the ownership of the Gentile, okay, he's put away from the opportunity, I'm going to put it that way, of observing mitzvot. All right, hacha mai. So in this case that we've just raised, all right, that Rav Yirmiyah asks Rabbi Zera, in this case, what's the status? I've given you two examples where there is a knas, where there is a punishment, so to speak. Clearly no benefit, just the opposite. All right. So the Gemara says, what's the status? Gavra knis rabanan. Vaha later. Okay.
This is still part of the question.
Right. So here the question is, you've got this person. There you have a knas established by the rabbis. At Vaha, and here in this case, but here not. Or, as the question continues, Dilma Mamona, or perhaps the knas is dealing with the money. Okay? Knas, right? Kanis Rabbanan. And here the rabbis do establish a knas. Okay?
The money is there.
Right? There you go. Vaha'ita. And here you have the person has money, either because he sold the slave in that case, or because he used the animal, or better still, because what happens in this case, as he says, okay, he has done this work as well. So what happens? Amarle, he says to him, Tanitua, we learned this, namely the following: Sadeh shenit kavtsu b'shvi'it. Okay, we're saying land that has been dethorned, okay, during the Shemitah year. What happens? You can seed or sow seed for that land after the conclusion of the Shvi'it year. Nitiva, but if he fertilized, nidaira, or he corralled animals so that they produce fertilizer in the land. Okay, 1 second, and then, all right. lo tizra lemotzei shvi'it. One cannot then go ahead and seed the land. Michael, comment.
Yeah, in the first case, it's like tumbleweed. It's loose, obstructive vegetation that he merely picks up. Had it been growing there and he pulled it out, then the din would have been they could not.
The implication is all right. I didn't see that anywhere. That example.
It's direct use. If you improve the land,
that's the point. It's the fact is if there's clear, direct improvement of the quality of the land, which is going to allow you to do further agricultural work, that's where it's prohibited. That's the impact. Okay?
Unless you die.
What?
Unless you die.
Well, then you certainly can't do the work.
But then your son can benefit.
Okay? Va'amar Rabbi Yossi. No, he can't. That's the point. Therefore, there should be a knas on him. We'll see. Let's see. Okay. Va'amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. So he says, let's say what Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says. Naktinan, okay? Let's say we've learned we have a Masorah, he tells us. We have a tradition. Hateva umeit, if he improved it and he died, beno zar'o, okay? The son can plant seeds. He can't sow the land. Alma, therefore, L'didei kansu rabanan. For him, okay, for the person who did the work, that's where the knas is applied by the rabbis. Libre lo kansu rabanan. But for his son, okay, the rabbis did not apply the knas. That's the point. Okay? Hachanami here too, in this case also, right? Well, I thought that was more for the Shaila.
Yeah, going back
to the original Shaila. Okay, where he asked, where Rabbi Yirmiyah asked Rabbi Zera, Melachto b'moed, that question, all right? So coming back then to that, okay, Hachanami l'didei kansu rabanan, libre lo kansu rabanan. For him, the rabbis made the knas. For his son, they did not make the knas. Now, Amar Abaye, since we cited one example of a Masorah, right, the Abaye is going to come up with another. Naktinan, again, we learn, right, as a Masorah. Tima, Taharotav Umeit. Okay, what did he do here? Okay, he did some act which resulted in things that are tahor, that were pure, became tameh, and then he died. Okay, lo kansu bano acharav. Okay, they did not put a knas on his son after. My tama, what was the reasoning? Hezek she'eno nikar lo shmei hezek. Okay, in other words, any damage that is not recognizable on the object, a real change, physical change.
Visible change.
What? Right.
Visible.
Yes. Okay. Right. That right. Okay. It's not considered a damage. The D-Day, but for him, kansura banan libre, lo kansura libre, lo kansura banan. For him, therefore, because he caused this physical actual change, the knas is on him, but that's not, the knas is not on the son. Okay? And we finish that piece. All right, new Mishnah. Okay, this Mishnah now tells them, Ein lochin batim, we do not purchase houses, avadim, male servants, ubehema, or animal, ela letzorach hamoed, except for one's need for the holiday occasion. Oh, letzorach hamocher. Or, says the Mishnah, it gives us another option. If the seller is in need, she'ein lo ma yochal, that he does not have something to eat. So in other words, you normally would not purchase these items except in a condition where you're aware that the seller has need to sell these items to get money to buy food for the yontif. Okay? Now, again, I pointed out that in the Art Scroll introduction, it does include that concept, okay? There among things that are referred to, right? So what happens here? Gemara, by mine Rava mirav Nachman. Okay, so Rava is now asking the question of Rav Nachman the following. Okay, now Sachar Pu'ula. There are a couple ways to explain this. I want us to keep in mind, we saw there was day workers, people who got paid their wage by the day. Okay, so that may be one way to clarify the word schar pu'ula. He gets paid his wages for his work, for his day's work. Okay, another could be just simply the general phrase schar pu'ula, whatever the wages. Okay, right. I'm going to suggest, as Michael is also suggesting, that we're really talking about a day worker, a day's wage, right? She'ein lo ma yochal, and he does not have enough to eat that day. Mahu, what's the status? Amarle, he said to him, Tanina, we learned this. O letzorech hamocher she'ein lo ma yochal, or for the purpose of the seller who doesn't have enough of what to eat. Yeah, so the Gemara, right? That was Mekach Memchar, which is only okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Well, we'll see. Okay. Well, we'll see. La'atuye mai. What does this include? Asks the Gemara. Lav la'atuye schar pu'ula. Doesn't this include the fact that he gets paid a day's wages for particular activity? Okay. Amarle lo. No. Parushe kamafaresh. No, he says, we're talking about simply a statement that is explaining further the Gemara. Eitive Abai. And Abai challenges this with a braita. Ein kotvin shtarei chov b'moed. We say we do not write, let's call it bills of in debt, okay? Promissory notes would be another explanation, okay, on Chol HaMoed. Ve'im eino ma'amino, and if he doesn't trust him, o she'ein lo ma yochal, or if he doesn't have anything to eat, harei ze yichtov, then one may write it. Okay, so in other words, it gives him something to hold on to, okay, as to guarantee food. She'ein lo ma yochal. Well, we'll see. Let's wait and see. Okay, she'ein lo ma yochal. What do we mean when we say again that he doesn't have anything to eat? La'atuye mai, to include what? Lav la'atuye schar pu'ula. Doesn't this again include the wages for his day's activity?
No, it's the wage of the sofa.
Well, we'll get to that. We're not there yet, Michael. We're not there yet. Hold on. Okay? Okay? All right. So, in other words, who are we talking about that would get paid for his day's activity? Are we talking about the fact of writing these documents? Okay? Does the sofer get paid for that activity? Okay, if he has to write it on Chol HaMoed? Shma mina. We learn from that indeed. Okay, that he should get paid for that. Okay, so that would seem to imply that if the sofer gets paid for writing those documents, okay, that therefore another kind of day worker also should get paid in that situation. Okay? Motiv Rav Sheshet. And Rav Sheshet now comes back and responds. The Chachamim Omrim, and sages say, Shalosh Umaniyot, Osin Malacha Ba'arve Psachim, ad chatzot. Okay? Now, in this statement, Rav Sheshet is telling us actually two things. Number one, he's telling us the sages say that there are three varieties of professions that may do their work on Erev Pesach until noon. Now, why is that important for us? It's important because the Gemara is going to say, normally we don't, in many places, allow people to work Erev Pesach. So we're going to suggest maybe there is a comparison that can be made between those that can work Erev Pesach and those who can work on Chol HaMoed. Okay? If we say that there are certain people that can work on Erev Pesach, why shouldn't we also say that they can work on Chol HaMoed? If we say they cannot work Erev Pesach, then clearly it tells us they should not work Chol HaMoed. Okay? All right.
When do they have to bring it from Pesach?
The question is, did they bring it before Chatzot, or did they have to get it? Everything had to be prepared then, and then they brought it.
I have to hang it.
Okay. All right. So what happens? So what are these three occupations? And again, if we're talking about these occupations, Erev Pesach, is there a parallel to Chol HaMoed? And is there a parallel to our conceptual issue? If you get paid here, okay, for your day's wage, okay, does somebody else get paid also for their wage for their day's work as well? Okay. Now, who gets paid? Hachaitin, the tailors or seamstresses, vasapirim, or the barbers, vakofsim, and the launderers. Why? Hachaitin, shekain hedyat tofer kedarko. The seamstresses and tailors get paid. Why? Because a common person might need to do sewing in preparation.
It's permitted to
okay,
sew on Chol
and
HaMoed.
right, and since they permitted and might have to do it, okay, Erev Pesach as well might apply to the Chol HaMoed as well. Okay, that's the text I had. That's the pshat that I got. B'cholo shel moed, to do so on Chol HaMoed. Okay, therefore, if they're able to do it on Chol HaMoed, clearly, likewise, it should work for a day worker in other fields. Hasapirim v'hakovsim, and the barbers and the launderers. Shekain haba'im medinat hayam v'yotzei beit ha'asurim. Likewise, there too, that if you had somebody that was on a long sea journey and they just got back, or they were just let out of jail by the authorities, mutarin l'saper l'chabes b'cholo shel moed. It is permissible for them to get a haircut or to have their garments washed on Chol HaMoed. And so therefore, again, I might use that as an example to say that therefore a day worker who does their own work on Chol HaMoed should get paid. Okay, is this telling me also some comparison to Erev Pesach? V'isal geda'atcha, and if you're going to say schar pu'ula she'en lo mayochal, that if you're going to say we're talking about the day worker, okay, who would get paid on, right, that he doesn't have anything to eat, shari, that therefore it's permitted, okay? Kol malachot nami l'shartu. All other kinds of professions should be allowed then to get paid for their work, okay? In that case, daha ika schar pu'ula, because here we have the example of schar pu'ula she'en lo ma yochal, that he doesn't have anything to eat. Okay? So what happens? Matkifla Rav Papa. Rav Papa challenges this. Ela me'ata Okay, binyan l'shtari. If that's the case, maybe a builder should be allowed to get paid for his work on that day. Shekain kotel ha-govaha l'rushut harabim, as in the case of a wall, leaning, tottering wall in the public domain. Soter uboneh kedarko. He should be able to tear it down and rebuild it in a normal manner. Mipnei hasakana, because of the danger. Matkif la Ravina. But Ravina challenges this, and he tells us as follows: Elameata lavlar l'shtare. Okay, here too, maybe we should allow the scribe also to permit him to do his work. Right? Okay, again, we're trying to see, is there that comparison between Erev Pesach and Kol HaMoed? Shekain kodvin Kedushay Nashim Gitin Shovarim. Why? Because then he's able to write a ketubah, right? Or Tanayim, okay, or write a get, or write a receipt. Okay. Ela Amar Rav Ashi. But Rav Ashi tells us, Moed Arba'a Asar Karamit. You're trying to make a comparison between Chol HaMoed and the 14th of Nisan, Erev Pesach. You're trying to compare those two, connect one with the other.
You can't say here Erev Pesach, because the difference is going to be that in the Torah's terminology, Pesach is the 14th, and Yontef is Chag HaMatzos. You'll see.
We'll see. Okay. Moed Mishum Tirchahu. The holiday, okay, there's an issue involved with tircha, with exertion. Ubamakom Pseda Sharu Rabbanan. But in a place where there's loss, we saw the rabbis made a kula. They made a leniency and they permitted it. Arbasa, on the 14th of Nisan, Mishum Tzorech Yom Tov. There we have a different situation. Okay? They are allowed to do their work on that day because it's part of the preparation for the holiday. That's the case. Midei de tzorech yom tov sharu rabbanan. There, because of the needs of preparing for the holiday. That's why the rabbis allowed them to do their work. Midei de lav tzorech yom tov, which would imply that if there was no any need on the 14th for the preparations to observe the holiday itself, lo sharu rabbanan, the rabbis would not have permitted them to work. Okay, that ends that piece. Okay, go on to a new Mishnah. Okay, now anybody in the real estate business should learn this Mishnah, right? Ein mefanin mibayit lebayit. Okay, we cannot move possessions. In other words, you don't arrange to move into your new condo in Century Village on Chol HaMoed. Doesn't matter. Okay. All right. What happens?
Wolverton to yarn.
Okay. All right. Ein mefani min bayit lebayit aval mefanehu lechatzero. But he can move his possessions out into his courtyard.
Okay. From one apartment to another in the same chutzner.
I didn't see that. I'm sorry. Maybe that's what Art Scroll says in the notes. Okay. All right. Ein mevi'in kelim mibait ha'oman. Okay. And we do not bring home, I'm going to use that phrase, utensils from the location of the craftsman. Im choshesh lahem. But if there is some question of suspicion, mefanim lechatzer acheret. One can move it to another courtyard. Okay? Gemara. Right? Vaha amart reisha ein mefanim klal. But at the beginning, you say that one can't move it whatsoever. Amar Abaye, Seifa ata'en lebeit shebechatzer. At the end, says Abaye, what happens is it tells us to move it to a house, okay, within the same courtyard. So Abaye gives a different spin on it, not just in the courtyard, but to another residence in the same courtyard.
So Abaye is saying if you have property at an unreliable workman in Wolverton, you're allowed to move it to another apartment in Wolverton.
In Wolverton, but that's Abaye, right? But that's Abaye's view. That's a difference. Okay. All right. Ve'ein meve'in kelimi beit ha'oman. We say we don't bring the utensils from the home of the place of the craftsman. Amar Rav Papa says, Rav Papa, Badik Lan Rabba. Rabba once gave us an exam, all right, and gave us the following. Snan, we learn in a Mishnah. Ein mevi'in kelimi beit ha'oman. Okay, we do not bring utensils from the place of the art craftsman. Urminhu, when we challenge this with the following. Molichin mevi'in kelimi beit ha'oman. We do bring to and bring home, okay, utensils to the location of the craftsman, even though it's not for the need of the holiday. And we taught this, right? Kan ba'arba'asa. This was dealing with the 14th, in other words, the day before Pesach. Kan b'cholo shel moed. And in one case, we said, no, the other dealt with the intermediate days of the holiday. Ibayat ema, if you want, I would say as follows. Havaha b'cholo shel moed. Both situations could apply to chol moed. Kan b'ma'amino, in one case where we trust the craftsman, kan b'she'eno ma'amino. In another case where we don't trust the craftsman. Vahatanya. But as we go on the top of the next Amud, but don't we say in a Braita, Mevi'in keli mi beit ha'oman, kegon kad mi beit ha'kadar, v'kos mi beit ha'zagav. Okay? Don't we say in this Braita that we can bring home to our own residence utensils from the place of the craftsman? For example, kad mi beit ha'kadar, a pot, okay, or a jug from the pottery maker, v'kos mi beit hazagav, or a glass object, okay, from the glass maker, aval lo samar mi beit hatzeva, but not dyed wool from the dyer, okay, v'lo keli mi beit ha'oman, okay, and not other utensils from the place of the craftsman. V'im ein lo ma yochal, and if he doesn't have what to eat, notein lo scharo, we can give him his salary, his wages, umanichal etzlo, and we leave the object with him, with the craftsman. V'im eino ma'amino, and if we don't trust him,
You bring it home.
manicho bebeit ha'samuchlo, then we don't bring it home. We put it
in the place closest.
We put it to his, give it to Steve, my neighbor, because I trust him.
Don't trust him, you still bring it home.
Right? Ve'im choshesh. Right? Ve'im choshesh. And if one still has suspicions, lahem, to the other people in that courtyard, right? Shema yignovu, lest they steal it. Menafin lechatzer acheret. You can bring it to another courtyard.
It's still not home.
Okay, it's still not right. Still not yet home. Ve'im eino mamino. And if you further don't even trust the people in that courtyard, mevi'in betzin b'toch beito. Then you sneak it home. You bring it privately. Okay. Now says the Gemara, taratzt mevi'in. You've explained about, you've given a solution to when we could bring it home. Molichin kasha, but bringing it to the craftsman, that's problematic. The katani, because we taught ein mevi'in, we do not bring it. The kol shekain she'ein molichin, we can't take it. We certainly can't bring it. Ela michavarta kedeshanayin meikara, but it's rather as we taught initially. Okay, right? That's the case. Okay, that's the point.
Mishnah in Psachim is talking about Erev Pesach, and the Mishnah here is
talking about Chol Hamoed. Okay, now what about other work? Right, says our Mishnah. Mechafin et hakitziot bakash. One may cover dates with straw. Okay.
Figs.
Or figs.
Okay.
Figs, dates. It's, right? Okay. Wait a second. What? Rabbi Yehuda Omer. He says, af ma'avin. Okay. He says you can condense them. Mochrei perot, the sellers of produce. Kasut, the sellers of clothes. V'kelim, the sellers of utensils. Mochrin betzin'ah, they may sell them in private. L'tzorech hamoed, for the welfare of the holiday, for the benefit of the holiday. Okay. Hatzayidin, those who are hunters. Vahadashashot, and those who make groats. Okay. Osin betzin'ah, l'tzorech hamoed, they do it in private, in secret, for the holiday. Okay? Now, some say, okay, what are we going to have? All right? Grosot, hadashot is the groats makers, grosot is the bean pounders or bean grinders. Okay? Do it private. Rabbi Yossi Omer, he says, Heim hichmiru al atzmam. They made stringency for themselves, that they would not work. Gemara says as follows: Plige ba Rabbi Chia bar Abba v'Rabbi Yossi, and there was a machloket between Rabbi Chia bar Abba and Rabbi Yossi. Utvavayu mishmei dechizkiya v'Rabbi Yochanan, and the two of them based their machloket on a machloket between Chizkiya and Rabbi Yochanan. Chad Amar, says one, mechafin aklushai, okay, that one can cover it lightly. Ma'abin asmuchai, but one can only condense it when they're densely. V'chad amar mechafin be'aklushai bein asmuchai. The other says one can cover it with the straw, regardless of whether it's lightly or whether it's densely. Ma'abin, we can, in terms of condense it, okay? What do? Osino to kamin kri. We make it into some sort of a pile. Tanya nami hachi. And we have a braita that teaches as well. Ma'avin, okay, when we pile it, condense it into a pile. Oseo to kamin kari. We make it a kind of pile. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's the view of Rabbi Yehuda. Mochrei peirot, the sellers of produce, ksut, garments, lekelim, and utensils. Mochrin betzina v'chule. We sell that sort of on the side, privately. All right? Ibaya laho. So they ask the following. Hein hichmiru al atzma. It says that they were stringent on themselves. Delo havu avdei klal. Does this imply that they didn't work at all? Okay. Or in general, dilma dahavu avdei betzina. Or do we say that perhaps they did it, okay, in the private, inside? Okay. Kashma. Listen to the following braita. Mochrei perot, the sellers of produce, ksut v'kelim, and of clothes and of utensils. Mochrin betzina l'tzorach hamoed. that they sell it in discreetly, privately, okay, for the sake of the holiday. Rabbi Yossi Omer says as follows: Tagre Tiberia, the merchants of Tiberias, Heinichmiru alatzman, they were stringent with themselves, Shalohiyu mochrin kol ikar, that they didn't sell whatsoever. They didn't even open their stores. Tzadei chayot va'ofot v'dagim, those who are hunters of animals and birds and fish, tzadin b'tzinah b'tzorach hamoed, they did their hunting and I assume sold their produce, okay, discreetly, privately, for the holiday. Rabbi Yossi says, tzadei ako hein hichmiru alatzman, those who were the hunters, so to speak, fishermen included of Akko, were stringent on themselves, shelo hayu tzadin kol ikar, that they didn't hunt whatsoever. Deshoshe chilka targis v'tisnei, okay, those who were the groat makers, okay, did their acts of work, dividing up their produce into chilka, targis, and tisnei, which we're going to see the Gemara is going to explain in a moment or two, all right? Doshashin, okay? But sin'ah, they do their groat making, their grinding, all right? But sin'ah, in private, l'tzorach hamoed. Rabbi Yossi Omer says, Rabbi Yossi, Doshashay tzipure, I'm going to say the groat makers, the grinders there of Tsephorus, they were stringent on themselves. That they didn't do any grinding whatsoever. Amar Abaye, what do we mean by these terms? Chilka, Targis, Batisne. Okay, what did they do, says Abaye? Chilka, Chada Letarti. Chilka means they divided it 1 into 2. In other words, they split it in half. Targis, Chada Letlat. Okay, 1 into 3. All right. Tisne, Chada Le'arba, 1 into 4. Okay. Ki ata Rav Dimi, Amar Kunta. When Rav Dimi came, he says Kunta. Okay, that was a different kind of grain. One translation was spelt, that was Art Scroll, and Koren said it was emmer wheat, E-M-M-E-R. Okay, it is the same item, it's just a different kind of grain.
No, emmer is spelled.
Okay, what is that? Okay, what happens? May Tive. We'll challenge it with the following. Chilka targis v'tisgei, tmein b'chol makom. They can become tomei under any situation. Bishlei melamanda amar chadalatarte v'tflat ula'arba. That's understandable, giving Abaye's explanation. That we said it was 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4. Mishum hachi tmein b'chol makom de'it kashur.
Because you have to
moisten. Right. Well, hold on. Okay. Why they can become tame? Because under any situation, if they become wet, right? Once they become wet, they are therefore susceptible to becoming tame.
And they're wet before they're ground.
Okay. All right. That is the point. Okay. It may be that in the process of grinding them, okay, somehow they become wet. Okay. Ela leman da amar kunta. But according to Rav Dimi, who said it was spelt or emerweit, whatever, okay, amai tmein b'chol makom. Why is it that they can become tomei under any circumstance? Halo it kashur. They don't become prepared through water, susceptible through water. Kigon demik kalpin. That's like husk. right? The love, because if not, the shara laho b'maya, they would be permitted water. Lo havi miklafa, they wouldn't be husked. Va'amai kare le chilka, why then do they call it chilka? The shakil chilkihu, why? Because they remove their husks.
And they're smooth.
Right? Meitive. Let's challenge this then again. Hanoder min hadagan asur af bepul hamitzri yavesh. Okay. Now, what happens here? We have a bright that says one who has taken a vow not to benefit, okay, from grain, therefore is prohibited from even eating or using or taking Egyptian, dry Egyptian, I'm going to call pool here beans. Okay? All right? Umutar belach, but he's permitted to have moist ones. Okay? Umutar ba'orez, and he's permitted with rice. Birchilka, if we say chilka is spelt here. Uvatargis, uvatistine. Okay? If he's permitted with these, does that imply, what is that day in terms of their status of tuma? Okay. Bish le'melaman damar chadalatarte chadalatlat chadalaba. Okay. Right. 1 to 2, 1 to 2, 3, 1 to 4. Shapir de nafkulaho mitorat dagan. Why? Because there they are removed from the status of being grain. Right? Amar kunta, but according to the one who says that it's gets to use the word spelt or emer, well, read dagan ma'al yahu. That's still quality grain. That's still variety of grain. Kasha, indeed, that's problematic. Rav Huna, new piece. Rav Huna shara laho lahinhu kefaraita. Rav Huna permitted the spice merchants, lemeze lezvune, okay, to go to sell their items, ki orchaihu b'shuka, as was their normal approach in the marketplace. Etive Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana responded with a challenge and answered, chanot petucha listav, those shops that are open along the row of pillars, along the roadway, they can open and close in their normal manner. But if the shop is open to the public domain, they open one door and they close one door. Okay? Ve'erev Yom Tov ha'acharon shel Chag, and when it comes close, excuse me, to Erev the last days of Sukkot, right? Motzi u'ma'amter et shukei ha'ir b'peirot b'shvil kvod Yom Tov ha'acharon. They take out their items and they adorn the marketplace of the city with their fruits and vegetables and whatever as an aspect of respect, glory for the holiday, the last day. So the Gemara says, Mipnei kavod Yom Tov ha'acharon, in for the glory, the honor of the holiday, yes. Shalom mipnei kavod Yom Tov, if it's not done for the honor of the holiday, no, they shouldn't do it. Lo kasha, it's not problematic. Ha b'pirei, ha b'tavlin. Here, in one case, we're talking about fruit, for example, or vegetables that are bought in large quantities for the holiday. Ha b'tavlin. Here we're talking about spices that are only bought in smaller quantities. Hadran alach misha hafach. And we'll stop there at the end of that parak and pick up tomorrow. Okay. Okay. Tomorrow we'll learn about haircuts and shaving.
Rabbi Green,
Yes, sir.
when they talk about people not having something to eat, I mean, that would be for Kulak Catholics. That would seem to be done for all of you. Must be.
Okay.
There's a
So-
machlokes what it means.
Okay. In Art Scroll's explanation of concepts, okay, they define, okay, I'm just going to just share it with you real quick, okay? Poel she'en lo ma yochal, one who lacks certain staples may work in Chol HaMoed to earn money for the purchase of food. That's how Art Scroll wants to define it.
Not dire poverty or completely.
In other words, we saw the Gemara tells us, ain't right? You're supposed to be, I'll put it this way, samachta b'chagech, right? Says the Torah. And the Gemara tells us, ein simcha ela be achila ushtiya. Okay? So in other words, there are certain kinds of foodstuffs that are considered to be minimum, yontifdik, special to celebrate the holiday. So that's the implication. Okay? Okay, guys. Yeah, go ahead.
The hunt, he's not hunting, he's got